The frozen tears on Adelaide Gardner's face caught the morning light like shattered diamonds, telling anyone who cared to look that her world had ended sometime in the night. Vincent Nash saw them from across the dusty main street of Fort Yuma, Arizona Territory, in the spring of 1878, and something in his chest tightened at the sight of the young woman standing alone outside the general store with her worn carpetbag clutched in both hands. He had ridden into town just before dawn, his horse tired from the 3-day journey from Tucson, his own body aching for a hot meal and a soft bed. But those tears, frozen on her pale cheeks in the cool desert morning, stopped him in his tracks. She could not have been more than 20 years old, dark blonde hair pulled back severely, her gray dress dusty and torn at the hem. She stared at nothing, her green eyes empty of everything except grief. Vincent dismounted slowly, tying his roan mare to the hitching post. He was 26, tall and lean from years of working cattle drives and breaking horses, his brown hair sun-streaked and too long, his face tanned and rough. He had come to Fort Yuma looking for work, hoping to earn enough to buy his own small ranch somewhere quieter, somewhere he could build something lasting. He had not expected to see a woman crying frozen tears on a Thursday morning. "Miss," he said quietly, removing his hat as he approached. "Are you all right?" She did not seem to hear him at first, then her eyes focused, taking him in with a wariness that spoke of recent hurt. "I am fine," she said, her voice hoarse. "Thank you for your concern." "You do not look fine," Vincent said, keeping his voice gentle. "You look like someone who needs help." Adelaide's jaw tightened. "What I need is employment and lodging. Unless you can provide either, I must ask you to leave me be." "What kind of employment?" "Any kind that will pay enough for a room and food." Her voice cracked slightly. "I can cook, clean, mend clothes, teach children their letters. I am not particular at this moment." Vincent studied her face, seeing the pride fighting against desperation. "There is a boarding house 2 streets over. Mrs. Chen runs it. She is always looking for help with the cooking and the laundry. Pay is not much, but it includes room and board." "Mrs. Chen," Adelaide repeated, hope flickering in her eyes. "Yes, tell her Vincent Nash sent you. She will listen." He hesitated, then asked, "What happened to you?" The hope died instantly, replaced by something cold and broken. "My husband died 3 days ago, cholera. We had been married 6 weeks. His family took everything, said I had no claim to any of it. They put me on a wagon headed west and told me never to come back." Her voice remained steady, factual, but those frozen tears on her cheeks told the real story. Vincent felt anger rise in his throat. "That is not right. You had every legal claim." His mother said otherwise. His brothers backed her. "I had no money for a lawyer, no family to support my claim. So here I am." She lifted her chin. "I do not need pity, I need work." "Then let me take you to Mrs. Chen right now. I was heading there myself for breakfast." Adelaide hesitated, clearly weighing her options. Finally, she nodded. "All right, thank you." They walked through the dusty streets of Fort Yuma, the sun climbing higher, bringing the heat that would make the day unbearable by noon. The town sat near the Colorado River, a strategic point that had once been an important army post. Now it was a growing town with a mix of farmers, merchants, soldiers, and drifters. Vincent had passed through once before, years ago, and remembered it as rough but honest. Mrs. Chen's boarding house was a 2-story adobe building with a wide porch and surprisingly green plants growing in boxes along the railings. The woman herself appeared when Vincent knocked, her weathered face breaking into a smile when she saw him. "Vincent Nash, I heard you might be coming through. Your father's letter arrived last week." "My father wrote to you?" Vincent asked, surprised. "Said you were looking for steady work and a place to stay. Said you were done with the wandering life." Mrs. Chen's sharp eyes moved to Adelaide. "And who is this?" "Adelaide Gardner," Vincent said. "She needs work and a place to stay. She is a widow recently arrived." Mrs. Chen's expression softened immediately. She reached out and took Adelaide's hand. "Come inside, child. Let me make you some tea." Over the next hour, sitting in Mrs. Chen's warm kitchen, Adelaide's story came out in pieces. She had been born in Ohio, the daughter of a schoolteacher and a seamstress. Both parents had died of influenza 2 years ago. She had been working as a governess when she met Thomas Gardner, a merchant's son who swept her off her feet with promises of adventure and a new life in California. They married quickly, perhaps too quickly, and set out west. But Thomas fell ill in a small town in New Mexico territory, and within days he was gone. "His family blamed me," Adelaide said quietly, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. "Said I had brought bad luck. They wanted me gone before I could claim any of Thomas's inheritance." "Horrible people," Mrs. Chen muttered. "You are better off away from them." "I have $5 to my name," Adelaide continued. "I need to earn my keep." "You will stay here," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "You will help with the cooking and the cleaning." "I have 4 boarders currently, soon to be 5 if Vincent takes the room I have available. You will have a small room on the first floor, 3 meals a day and $2 a week for personal expenses. Does that suit?" Adelaide's eyes filled with new tears, these ones warm. "Yes, thank you. I do not know how to repay your kindness." "You will repay it by healing and building a new life," Mrs. Chen said. "That is all I ask." Vincent watched Adelaide's face transform with relief and gratitude, and he felt that tightness in his chest again. Something about her drew him, something beyond her obvious beauty and misfortune. There was a strength in her, a determination not to be broken by the cruelty life had dealt her. "I will take that room too," he told Mrs. Chen. "I found work at the Murphy Ranch starting Monday. They need someone who can break horses." "Then we are all settled," Mrs. Chen said, smiling. "Welcome home, both of you." The next few days passed in a blur of work and routine. Adelaide threw herself into her tasks with almost frantic energy, as if staying busy could keep the grief at bay. She woke before dawn to help Mrs. Chen prepare breakfast, spent the mornings washing linens and cleaning rooms, the afternoons mending clothes and preparing dinner, and the evenings serving the boarders and cleaning up afterward. Vincent found himself watching her more than he should, noticing the way she moved through the boarding house like a ghost, efficient and silent. The frozen tears were gone from her face, but the sadness remained in her eyes, a deep well of grief she had not yet processed. He wanted to help but did not know how. They were strangers, connected only by circumstance and Mrs. Chen's kindness. On Sunday, Mrs. Chen declared a day of rest and insisted Adelaide come to church with her and Vincent. Adelaide protested that she had no appropriate dress, but Mrs. Chen produced a simple blue cotton dress that had belonged to her daughter. "She married and moved to San Francisco," Mrs. Chen explained. "She would want you to have it." The church was a small adobe building with rough wooden pews and a young priest who spoke with a thick Irish accent. Vincent sat between Mrs. Chen and Adelaide, acutely aware of Adelaide's presence beside him, the faint scent of the lavender soap she used in the laundry, the way her hands trembled slightly as she held the hymnal. After the service, several townspeople introduced themselves to Adelaide with genuine warmth. Fort Yuma might be rough around the edges, but it had a good heart, Vincent thought. People here understood hardship and survival. They did not judge. "Would you like to walk by the river?" Vincent asked Adelaide as the crowd dispersed. "It is cooler there." She looked at him with surprise, then nodded slowly. "Yes, I would like that." They walked in silence at first, following the path down to the Colorado River. The water flowed brown and steady, bringing life to the desert. Trees grew along the banks, providing precious shade. Vincent led Adelaide to a spot where a large cottonwood created a natural shelter. "I come here to think," he told her. "It is peaceful." Adelaide sat on a flat rock, arranging her borrowed skirts carefully. "Thank you for bringing me here. And for helping me that first morning. I do not think I properly thanked you." "You do not need to thank me. Anyone would have done the same." "No," she said quietly. "Not everyone. Many people passed me that morning. You were the only one who stopped." Vincent sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "I know what it is like to be alone and lost. My mother died when I was 16. My father raised me and my sister on his own, working himself nearly to death. When I was 18, I left to make my own way, to ease the burden on him. I have been drifting ever since, looking for something I could not name. And have you found it? I think maybe I am starting to." He looked at her profile, the way the dappled sunlight played across her face. "What about you? What will you do now?" "I will work and save money. Perhaps eventually I can open my own dress shop or become a teacher. I have to build a new life from nothing." Her voice was steady, but he heard the fear underneath. "I am not sure I know how." "You do it one day at a time," Vincent said. "You wake up, you work, you eat, you sleep. You let time pass, and slowly the grief becomes something you can carry instead of something that crushes you." Adelaide turned to look at him fully for the first time, really seeing him. "You have known grief too?" "Yes, my mother's death, the end of a life I thought I would have. The realization that sometimes the world is just cruel and there is no reason for it." "That is exactly it," she whispered. "There is no reason. Thomas was good and kind. He should not have died. We should have had a lifetime together." "But he did die," Vincent said gently. "And you are still alive. That is not a betrayal of him. It is just the truth. You are alive, and you have to decide what to do with that life." Adelaide's eyes filled with tears again, but this time she let them fall, warm and healing instead of frozen. "I do not know if I can." "You can. I have seen you working this past week. You are strong, Adelaide, stronger than you know." She cried quietly, and without thinking, Vincent reached out and took her hand. She did not pull away. They sat together under the cottonwood tree, her hand in his, the river flowing past, and something began to shift between them, something fragile and new. The weeks that followed established a rhythm. Vincent worked long days at the Murphy Ranch, breaking horses and mending fences, coming back to Mrs. Chen's boarding house tired and dusty but satisfied. Adelaide continued her work, and slowly, the haunted look in her eyes began to fade, replaced by a quiet determination. They fell into the habit of sitting together after dinner, on the porch or in the small parlor, talking about their days, their pasts, their hopes. Vincent told her about his childhood in Texas, about his sister who had married a shopkeeper and seemed happy, about his dream of owning land where he could raise horses properly, with care and respect for the animals. Adelaide told him about her parents, her father's love of poetry, her mother's skilled needlework. She told him about the students she had taught as a governess, and how she had dreamed of having her own children someday, a house full of laughter and learning. "You still want that?" Vincent asked one evening in late May, the heat finally breaking as the sun set. "I do not know," Adelaide said honestly. "I thought I would have it with Thomas. Now that future is gone, and I cannot see what might replace it. Give it time. The future has a way of surprising us." As June arrived, bringing brutal heat to the Arizona territory, Vincent realized he was falling in love with Adelaide Gardner. It happened gradually, in small moments. The way she laughed when Mrs. Chen told a particularly outrageous story about her youth in China. The fierce concentration on her face as she mended a difficult tear in a shirt. The gentleness with which she treated a stray dog that hung around the boarding house, saving scraps from her own meals to feed it. But he held back, uncertain if his feelings were welcome. She was still grieving her husband, still healing. The last thing he wanted was to impose on her pain or take advantage of her vulnerability. Then one Saturday in mid-June, everything changed. Vincent had the day off and found Adelaide in the boarding house kitchen, looking frustrated as she tried to coax the temperamental stove to cooperate. "This wretched thing," she muttered, then looked up and saw him. "Oh, Vincent, I did not know you were back. Just got here." "What is wrong with the stove? It will not stay lit. Mrs. Chen went to visit a friend and I promised I would have dinner ready, but I cannot even get the fire going properly." Vincent crouched down and examined the stove, seeing immediately that the flue was blocked. He cleared it quickly and soon had a good fire burning. When he stood up, Adelaide was looking at him with such gratitude and something else, something warmer that his breath caught. "Thank you," she said softly. "You are always helping me." "I like helping you," he said, then realized how that sounded. "I mean, I like being able to help when you need it." Adelaide stepped closer, her green eyes searching his face. "Vincent, I need to tell you something." His heart started pounding. "All right." "These past 2 months you have been so kind to me, so patient. You have asked nothing from me, expected nothing. You have just been there, steady and good, and I have been thinking about what that means." "Adelaide, let me finish," she said, a tremor in her voice. "When Thomas died, I thought my life was over. I thought I would never feel anything again except grief and loss. But then I met you, and slowly, day by day, I have been feeling again. Happiness, hope, and something more, something I did not expect and was not looking for." Vincent did not dare move, barely dared to breathe. "I think I am falling in love with you," Adelaide whispered. "And I do not know if that is all right, or if it is too soon, or if I am betraying Thomas's memory. But it is the truth, and I needed to tell you." Relief and joy flooded through Vincent like a river breaking through a dam. "Adelaide, I have been in love with you for weeks. I did not say anything because I did not want to rush you, did not want to make you feel obligated or uncomfortable. But I love you. I love your strength and your kindness and the way you keep fighting even when life has knocked you down." Her eyes widened. "You love me. Yes, completely. Absolutely." He took a step closer, reaching up to cup her face gently in his hands. "And you are not betraying anyone's memory by choosing to live and to love again. You deserve happiness, Adelaide. You deserve a future full of all the things you dreamed about." A tear slid down her cheek, but she was smiling. "I am frightened." "I am too," he admitted. "Love is terrifying. But I think it is worth it." "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, it is." Vincent leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, but she did not pull away. She rose up on her toes and met him halfway, and when their lips touched, it was like coming home after a long journey. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, then deeper as they both gave in to the feelings they had been holding back. When they finally broke apart, Adelaide was crying again, but these were tears of joy. "I did not think I could feel this way again." "Neither did I," Vincent said, pulling her close, holding her against his chest. "But here we are." "Here we are," she echoed, and he could hear the smile in her voice. They stood together in the warm kitchen, the fire crackling in the stove, the afternoon sun streaming through the window, and Vincent knew his drifting days were over. He had found what he had been looking for, even though he had not known it until he saw frozen tears on her face that morning in April. The news of their courtship spread quickly through the boarding house and then through the town. Mrs. Chen was delighted, declaring that she had known from the first day that they were meant for each other. The other boarders congratulated them with genuine warmth. Vincent's employer, Mr. Murphy, offered him a permanent position with better pay and a small cabin on the ranch property. "You will need a proper place if you are planning to marry," Murphy said, a gruff man with a kind heart. "The cabin needs work, but it has good bones. You can fix it up however you like." "Thank you, sir. I appreciate it more than I can say." Vincent and Adelaide spent their free time together, getting to know each other in deeper ways. They rode out to see the cabin, which was indeed rough but had potential. It sat on a pretty piece of land with a view of the distant mountains and a small creek running nearby. "I could make it beautiful," Adelaide said, her eyes bright with excitement. "We could plant a garden, maybe get some chickens. I could make curtains for the windows and cushions for the chairs." "We could build a good life here," Vincent agreed, wrapping his arms around her from behind as they stood on the small porch. "A real home." She leaned back against him. "When should we marry?" "Whenever you are ready. I do not want to rush you." Adelaide turned in his arms to face him. "I am ready now. I have been thinking about it, and I realize that I have mourned Thomas properly. I will always carry the memory of him with me, the love we shared, brief as it was. But I am ready to move forward to build a new life with you. I do not want to wait. Are you sure?" "I am absolutely sure. I love you, Vincent Nash. I want to be your wife." He kissed her there on the porch of their future home, the summer sun beating down, the desert stretching out around them in all its harsh beauty. "Then let us get married as soon as the priest can arrange it." They were married 3 weeks later, on the first Saturday in July 1878, in the same small adobe church where they had attended services together. Adelaide wore a new dress that she had sewn herself, pale yellow cotton with white lace at the collar and cuffs. Mrs. Chen gave her a bouquet of wildflowers picked from the river valley. Vincent wore his best shirt and pants, his hair neatly trimmed, his face clean-shaven. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. The Irish priest spoke about love and commitment, about building a life together through both hardship and joy. Vincent spoke his vows with his whole heart, promising to love and honor Adelaide for as long as he lived. Adelaide's voice trembled but remained clear as she promised the same. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, Vincent kissed Adelaide with a tenderness that made several of the women in attendance cry, including Mrs. Chen. The small church erupted in applause and cheers. The wedding breakfast was held at the boarding house, with Mrs. Chen and several townswomen providing a feast of food. There was roasted chicken and beef, fresh bread, vegetables from the local gardens, and 3 different pies. Someone brought a fiddle, and there was music and dancing in the yard. Vincent danced with his new wife, holding her close, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. "Happy?" he asked. "Happier than I thought possible," she said, smiling up at him. "Thank you for seeing me that morning. Thank you for stopping when everyone else passed by. Thank you for letting me help, for giving me a chance." "It was more than a chance," Adelaide said. "It was a gift. You gave me back my life, Vincent. You wrote a new story when the old one ended." That night they went to their cabin for the first time as husband and wife. Vincent had spent the past 3 weeks working on it every spare moment, and with help from several ranch hands, he had transformed it from a rough shelter into a cozy home. The roof no longer leaked, the windows had new glass panes, the floors were swept clean. Adelaide had made curtains and a colorful quilt for the bed. Mrs. Chen had donated a table and chairs. Mr. Murphy had given them a wedding present of a new stove. "It is perfect," Adelaide breathed, looking around at their home. "It is ours," Vincent said. "The first place that has truly been mine, and now ours together." They spent their wedding night learning each other, tender and patient, building the physical intimacy that matched their emotional connection. Vincent was gentle with Adelaide, mindful of her past grief and loss, wanting her to feel only loved and cherished. She responded to him with a passion that surprised them both, finding in their union a healing she had not expected. Afterward, they lay together in their bed, the summer night warm around them, the sound of crickets and a distant coyote singing outside. Adelaide rested her head on Vincent's chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I did not think I could have this again," she said quietly. "A partner, a home, a future. When Thomas died and his family cast me out, I thought I was destined to be alone, just surviving day to day. You will never be alone again," Vincent promised. "Whatever comes, we face it together." "Together," she echoed, and he heard the contentment in her voice. The summer passed in a haze of happiness and hard work. Vincent continued his job at the Murphy Ranch, proving himself invaluable with the horses. He had a gift for gentling even the wildest mustangs, approaching them with patience and respect rather than force. Adelaide kept their cabin immaculate and made improvements wherever she could. She sewed new clothes for both of them, planted a vegetable garden that somehow flourished despite the desert heat, and even managed to acquire 3 chickens that provided fresh eggs. On Sundays, they attended church and then spent the afternoon at their favorite spot under the cottonwood tree by the river. Sometimes they talked, sharing more stories of their pasts, their hopes for the future. Sometimes they simply sat in companionable silence, content to be together. In August, Adelaide began helping at the town school 3 days a week, assisting the elderly schoolteacher with the younger children. The pay was modest, but she loved the work, and it gave her a sense of purpose beyond the domestic sphere. Vincent encouraged her, proud of her skills and dedication. "You are a natural teacher," he told her one evening as they sat on their porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. "The children adore you." "I adore them," Adelaide said. Today, little Mary Thompson finally mastered her letters. The look of triumph on her face when she spelled her first word correctly was worth everything. "What word did she spell?" "Love," Adelaide said, smiling. "She spelled love." Vincent reached over and took her hand, lacing their fingers together. Appropriate. As autumn arrived, bringing relief from the summer heat, Adelaide discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but when the doctor confirmed it, the reality of it overwhelmed her. She was going to be a mother. She and Vincent were going to have a child. She told him that evening, nervous about his reaction despite knowing he would be happy. They were sitting at their table, finishing dinner, the lamplight warm and golden around them. "Vincent, I have something to tell you." He looked up from his plate, immediately attentive. "What is it? Is something wrong?" "No, nothing is wrong. Everything is very right." She took a deep breath. "I am expecting a baby. The doctor confirmed it today. I am about 3 months along, which means the baby should arrive in early April." For a moment, Vincent just stared at her, processing the information. Then his face broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen. He jumped up from his chair, came around the table and swept her into his arms, spinning her around before carefully setting her back down. "A baby." "Adelaide, we are going to have a baby," she laughed, crying at the same time, relief and joy flooding through her. "Yes, we are. Are you happy?" "Happy. I am beyond happy. I am elated. Terrified, but elated." He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "Our child is in there right now, growing." "Yes," she said softly, placing her hand over his. "Our child." That night they lay in bed and talked about the future in concrete terms for the first time. They discussed names, possible additions to the cabin to make room for a nursery, how they would manage with Adelaide unable to work in the later months of her pregnancy. Vincent promised to take on extra work if needed. Adelaide promised to be careful and not overdo things. I want this child to have everything, Vincent said, his hand resting protectively on Adelaide's stomach. A safe home, loving parents, opportunities to learn and grow. They will have all of that, Adelaide assured him. They will have us, and that is the most important thing. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the fall and into winter. Adelaide continued teaching until December, when the schoolteacher insisted she rest. Her belly grew round and prominent, and she experienced the typical discomforts of pregnancy, but she remained healthy and positive. Vincent fussed over her, making sure she ate enough, did not work too hard, and stayed warm as the winter nights grew cold. Christmas was a quiet celebration, just the two of them in their cabin, with a small pine tree Vincent had cut from the mountains and a simple dinner Adelaide had prepared. They exchanged modest gifts. A new leather belt Adelaide had made for Vincent, a beautiful shawl Vincent had commissioned from a weaver in town for Adelaide. "This is the best Christmas I have ever had," Adelaide said, wrapped in her new shawl, sitting close to the fire. "Better than last Christmas?" Vincent asked, then immediately regretted it. Last Christmas she would have been newly married to Thomas, preparing for their journey west, but Adelaide did not look sad. She looked thoughtful. "Yes, better. Last Christmas I was happy but also anxious. Thomas and I barely knew each other, really. We were married, but we were still strangers in many ways. With you, I feel completely known and completely loved. That is something special." Vincent kissed her forehead. "You are completely known and completely loved, always." The new year of 1879 arrived with cold winds and hope. Adelaide's belly grew larger, the baby active and strong. She could feel every kick and movement, and she would place Vincent's hand on her stomach so he could feel too. Those moments filled him with a wonder he had never experienced before, the miracle of new life they had created together. In March, as Adelaide entered her final month of pregnancy, Vincent began to get nervous. What if something went wrong during the birth? What if he lost her the way she had lost Thomas? The thought terrified him, though he tried to hide it, but Adelaide saw through him. "Vincent, talk to me. What is troubling you?" They were sitting on their porch on an unusually warm evening, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Vincent was silent for a long moment, then said, "I am frightened. Childbirth is dangerous. Women die. And if something happened to you, I do not know how I would survive it." Adelaide took his hand and held it firmly. "I am not going to die. I am young and healthy, and we have a good doctor. Women give birth every day and survive just fine. But not all of them. No, not all of them, but I will be one of the ones who does." She turned to look at him directly. "Vincent, you cannot live in fear of losing me. We cannot live that way. We have to trust that we will have many years together, that we will raise our child and maybe more children, that we will grow old together. We have to believe in our future." He knew she was right, but the fear remained. He held her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the swell of her pregnant belly against him. "I love you so much. I did not know it was possible to love someone this much." "I love you too," she whispered, "and I am not going anywhere." On April 10, 1879, Adelaide went into labor just after midnight. Vincent fetched the doctor and Mrs. Chen, who had agreed to assist with the birth. The next 18 hours were the longest of Vincent's life. He paced outside the bedroom, listening to Adelaide's cries of pain, feeling utterly helpless. Mrs. Chen came out periodically to update him. "She is doing fine. It is progressing normally. First babies take time." Vincent nodded, tried to believe her, paced some more. He prayed, something he had not done much of since his mother's death, but he prayed now, offering God anything if Adelaide would just be all right. Finally, as the sun was setting on April 11, he heard a new sound, a baby's cry, strong and lusty. His heart nearly stopped. Then Mrs. Chen appeared in the doorway, smiling broadly. "You have a son, Vincent. A healthy, beautiful son. And Adelaide is tired but well. Come meet your boy." Vincent entered the bedroom on shaking legs. Adelaide was propped up against pillows, her hair damp with sweat, her face exhausted but radiant. And in her arms, wrapped in a blanket, was a tiny red-faced baby with a shock of dark hair. "Vincent," Adelaide said softly, "come meet our son." He approached slowly, carefully, as if sudden movement might break the spell. Adelaide shifted the baby so Vincent could see him better. The infant's eyes were closed, his tiny fists waving in the air, his mouth working as he searched for food. "He is perfect," Vincent breathed, tears streaming down his face. "You did it. You brought our son into the world. We did it," Adelaide corrected gently. "Both of us." "Vincent, do you want to hold him?" With careful guidance from Adelaide and Mrs. Chen, Vincent learned how to support the baby's head and body. He held his son for the first time, looking down at the tiny face, feeling the weight of new responsibility and overwhelming love crash over him. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "I am your father. I am going to take care of you and love you every day of your life. That is a promise." The baby made a small sound and Vincent laughed through his tears. "I think he heard me." "What should we name him?" Adelaide asked. "We discussed so many names but never decided." Vincent thought for a moment, then said, "What about William? William Nash. It was my grandfather's name. He was a good man, strong and honest." "William," Adelaide repeated, testing it out. "Yes, I like that. William Nash." Welcome to the world, William. The first weeks with a newborn were exhausting and wonderful. William was a good baby, healthy and growing quickly, but he demanded constant attention. Adelaide nursed him every few hours, changed countless diapers, and somehow survived on very little sleep. Vincent helped as much as he could, taking William for walks when he fussed, rocking him to sleep, doing extra chores so Adelaide could rest. Mrs. Chen visited frequently, bringing food and advice, admiring William and telling stories about raising her own children. The townspeople stopped by with gifts, hand-knitted blankets, tiny clothes, wooden toys carved by skilled hands. Vincent and Adelaide were overwhelmed by the generosity and support of their community. As summer arrived again, and William grew stronger, Adelaide began to regain her energy. She established a routine that worked for their family. Vincent continued working at the Murphy Ranch, coming home each evening to a wife and son who greeted him with joy. Those homecomings became the highlight of his days, seeing Adelaide's smile and William's increasingly alert gaze. One evening in late June, as they sat on their porch with William asleep in Adelaide's arms, Vincent said, "Do you remember what you said to me the day we got married, about me writing a new story?" "Yes, I remember. I was thinking about that today. When I first saw you, standing outside the general store with frozen tears on your face, I saw your grief and pain written there as clearly as words on a page. You had lost everything, or so it seemed. But then I offered my help, and slowly we wrote a new story together. This story." He gestured to their cabin, to William, to the life they had built. "This is our story, Adelaide, and it is a good one." Adelaide smiled, her eyes shining. "It is a very good one, the best story I could have imagined." William stirred in her arms, making small, contented sounds. Vincent reached over and gently touched his son's soft head. "And we are just getting started. This little one will have his own chapters to add." "Many chapters," Adelaide agreed. "Many years of love and life ahead of us." As the years passed, their story continued to unfold in beautiful and unexpected ways. William grew into a bright, curious boy with his mother's green eyes and his father's determined spirit. When he was 3 years old, Adelaide gave birth to a daughter they named Emma, who arrived in the autumn of 1882 with a full head of red blonde hair and a fierce will even as an infant. Vincent received a promotion at the Murphy Ranch, eventually becoming the foreman, which came with better pay and more respect. He saved carefully, and when Mr. Murphy decided to retire in 1885, Vincent was able to purchase a portion of the ranch property, including their cabin and the surrounding land. He finally achieved his dream of owning land where he could raise horses with care and respect. Adelaide continued teaching part-time, beloved by her students and their parents. She also became known for her quilting, creating intricate and beautiful designs that she sometimes sold at the general store. She found fulfillment in balancing motherhood with her own interests and skills. In 1886, their third child arrived, another son they named Charles. He was a peaceful baby, easy-going and content, the opposite of his sister Emma's fiery temperament. Vincent and Adelaide's home was full of noise and laughter, arguments and reconciliations, the messiness and beauty of family life. The children grew up knowing they were deeply loved. Vincent taught William and Charles to ride and care for horses, passing on his skills and his philosophy of respect for animals. Adelaide taught all three children to read and write, instilling in them a love of learning. Emma showed an early talent for drawing, filling pages with sketches of horses, desert landscapes, and her family. Through it all, Vincent and Adelaide's love for each other only deepened. They had their disagreements, of course, and moments of frustration or exhaustion. Raising three children and running a horse ranch was not easy, but they faced every challenge together, just as Vincent had promised on their wedding night. On their 10th wedding anniversary in July 1888, Vincent took Adelaide back to the cottonwood tree by the river, the spot where they had first begun to open their hearts to each other. They sat in the shade, older now but still very much in love, watching the water flow past. "Do you ever think about that first morning?" Vincent asked. "When I saw you outside the general store, I think about it often," Adelaide said. "I was so lost that day, so broken. I truly believed my life was over at 20 years old. But it was not over, it was just beginning." "Yes. Because you stopped, because you saw me and cared enough to help." She took his hand, lacing their fingers together in the familiar gesture that had comforted them through a decade of marriage. "You gave me back my life, Vincent. You gave me love and hope and a future I never dared dream of." "You did the same for me," he said. "I was drifting, searching for something I could not name. You were what I was searching for, you and the life we have built together." Adelaide leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the river and the birds, feeling the warm summer breeze. After a while, she said, "Do you remember what you told me that first day by this river? You said to take it one day at a time, to let time pass, and the grief would become something I could carry instead of something that crushed me. I remember. You were right. The grief did not disappear. I still think about Thomas sometimes, about the life we might have had. But it does not crush me anymore. It is just a part of my story, one chapter in a much longer book." "And what chapter are we in now?" Vincent asked, smiling. "The happiest one," Adelaide said without hesitation. "The one where we are surrounded by our children, where we have built something lasting and good, where we wake up every morning grateful for another day together. This is the chapter I want to live in forever. Then we will make it last as long as possible," Vincent promised. As their children grew older, Vincent and Adelaide watched with pride as each developed their own personality and dreams. William, the eldest, showed his father's gift with horses and declared his intention to expand the family business. Emma discovered a passion for teaching, inspired by her mother, and announced she wanted to attend normal school to become a certified teacher. Charles, the youngest, loved to read and write, spending hours with books and filling notebooks with stories and observations. "They are going to leave us someday," Adelaide said one evening in 1893, watching 15-year-old William work with a young horse in the corral. "They will grow up and build their own lives." "That is what we want for them," Vincent said, though he felt the same bittersweet emotion. "We want them to be independent and strong to find their own paths. I know, but I will miss them." "We will still have each other," Vincent reminded her, pulling her close. "Just like we started, the two of us against the world." Adelaide smiled up at him. "That is all I need." In 1895, when William turned 16, he asked his father for permission to court Sarah Miller, the daughter of a local rancher. Vincent, remembering his own courtship of Adelaide, gave his blessing. Emma, now 13, was horrified by her brother's interest in romance, declaring that she would never be so foolish. Adelaide and Vincent shared knowing smiles, certain that Emma would change her tune in a few years. Charles, at 10 years old, was still more interested in his books than anything else, but he had developed a close friendship with the new schoolteacher's son, a boy named Peter, who shared his love of reading and writing. Vincent and Adelaide encouraged the friendship, happy to see their youngest son finding his place in the world. The turn of the century came in 1900 with celebrations throughout Fort Yuma and the entire nation. The children were young adults now. William, at 21, engaged to Sarah Miller and planning a spring wedding. Emma, at 18, preparing to leave for normal school in Phoenix. And Charles, at 15, already helping at the local newspaper as an apprentice reporter. Vincent and Adelaide, now in their late 40s, looked at their grown children with amazement. Where had the time gone? It seemed like just yesterday they were bringing newborn William home from the hospital, and now he was about to start his own family. William's wedding to Sarah in April 1901 was a joyous occasion, held at the same church where Vincent and Adelaide had married 23 years earlier. Adelaide cried through the entire ceremony, partly from happiness and partly from nostalgia for the small boy William had once been. Vincent held her hand, understanding completely after the wedding as the new couple rode off to their own small house on the Nash property. Adelaide turned to Vincent and said, "We are going to be grandparents someday." "Yes, we are," he said, the idea both strange and wonderful. "Grandparents. That means we are getting old." "Maybe, but I do not feel old when I am with you." Adelaide laughed. "Flatterer, but I will take the compliment." That autumn, Emma left for normal school, determined to become the best teacher she could be. Her departure left a hole in the household, her fierce energy and strong opinions suddenly absent. Charles, now 16 and focused on his apprenticeship at the newspaper, became quieter without his siblings at home. Vincent and Adelaide found themselves alone more often than they had been in over 2 decades. At first, it felt strange, almost uncomfortable. But gradually, they rediscovered the intimacy and companionship they had shared in the early days of their marriage. They took long walks, sat on their porch in the evenings talking about everything and nothing, made love with the unhurried passion of long-time partners who knew each other completely. "I like this," Adelaide admitted one Sunday afternoon as they rested in bed, the winter sun streaming through their window. "I love our children desperately, but I like having you to myself again." "I feel the same," Vincent said, running his hand through her hair, which now showed threads of silver among the blonde. "We raised 3 good people, Adelaide. We did our job well. Now we get to enjoy each other again." "And prepare to spoil our future grandchildren," she added with a mischievous smile. That too. In December 1901, Sarah told them she was expecting a baby, due in late summer. Adelaide cried again, this time from pure joy. She was going to be a grandmother. The baby arrived in August 1902. A healthy girl they named Adelaide Grace, after both grandmothers. When Vincent first held his granddaughter, looking down at the tiny face that somehow resembled both William and Sarah, he felt the same overwhelming love he had experienced when holding his own children. "Life is full of circles," he told Adelaide later as they sat on their porch watching the sunset. "We start with nothing, we build a life, we raise children, and then we get to see them raise their own children. It is beautiful." "It is," Adelaide agreed, leaning against him. "And we get to be part of all of it." Emma returned from normal school in 1903, certified and enthusiastic, immediately securing a position at the Fort Yuma School, where her mother had once taught. She threw herself into her work with characteristic intensity, beloved by her students despite her strict standards. She also began courting James Peterson, a young man who worked at the bank, much to her parents' amusement given her earlier declarations about never being interested in romance. Charles continued his work at the newspaper, showing real talent as a writer and reporter. In 1904, when he was 19, he sold his first short story to a magazine in San Francisco, a Western tale inspired by his father's stories of the old days. Vincent was enormously proud, marveling at how his quiet youngest son had found his voice through writing. In 1905, Emma married James Peterson in a beautiful ceremony, and Charles moved to Phoenix to work for a larger newspaper there, pursuing his dream of becoming a serious journalist. William and Sarah had a second child, a son they named Vincent, and the Nash property continued to thrive under William's dedicated management. Vincent and Adelaide, now in their 50s, found themselves truly empty nesters. The house that had once rung with children's voices and the chaos of family life was quiet now. But it was not a sad quiet. It was peaceful, full of contentment and shared memories. One evening in the summer of 1906, Vincent found Adelaide in their bedroom, looking through an old trunk. She pulled out the gray dress she had been wearing the day they met, carefully preserved though she would never wear it again. "I found this," she said softly. "I had forgotten I still had it." Vincent came to stand beside her, looking at the dress that had been worn and dusty, torn at the hem when he first saw her. "Do you want to keep it?" "I think so. It reminds me of where I started, how far I have come." She folded the dress carefully and placed it back in the trunk. That girl standing outside the general store with frozen tears on her face, she was so lost and scared. Sometimes I can barely remember being her. "But you were her," Vincent said gently. "She is part of your story. She is. And she survived and built a beautiful life because a good man stopped to help her." Adelaide turned to look at Vincent, her green eyes still as bright as they had been 28 years ago. "Thank you for stopping, Vincent. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible to everyone else. Thank you for letting me help, for giving me the chance to write a new story with you." He pulled her close, holding her tight. "I love you, Adelaide. I have loved you from that first morning, and I will love you until my last breath." "I love you too," she whispered against his chest. "Always and forever." They stood together in their bedroom, in the cabin Vincent had transformed into a home, on the land they now owned, surrounded by the life they had built together. Outside, the desert sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors. Inside, two hearts beat in rhythm, two lives completely intertwined, two souls that had found each other in the midst of grief and loss, and had created something beautiful from the ashes. The years continued to pass, bringing both joy and sorrow as years always do. In 1910, William and Sarah had their third child, another daughter. Emma and James welcomed their first baby in 1911. Charles married a fellow writer in 1912, a brilliant woman named Margaret who shared his passion for journalism and social reform. Vincent retired from the day-to-day running of the ranch in 1915, turning full control over to William while remaining available for advice and support. He was 63 years old, still healthy but ready to slow down. Adelaide had stopped teaching years ago, but remained active in the community, now helping to run the town library. They had 7 grandchildren by 1918, ranging in age from 16 to 2 years old, and their home was frequently filled with children's laughter when the whole family gathered for Sunday dinners or holidays. Vincent and Adelaide thrived in their roles as grandparents, providing love and wisdom and the occasional treat that the children's parents might not approve of. In the spring of 1920, Vincent and Adelaide celebrated their 42nd wedding anniversary. They were both in their late 60s now, their hair silver, their faces lined with age and sun and years of smiling. But they were still healthy, still active, still very much in love. On their anniversary, they returned once more to the cottonwood tree by the river, a pilgrimage they had made every few years throughout their marriage. The tree was older now, its branches thick and gnarled, but it still provided generous shade. They sat in their favorite spot, holding hands. 42 years, Adelaide marveled. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime, and sometimes it feels like no time at all. I know exactly what you mean, Vincent said. I can still see you as you were that first morning, standing outside the general store with those frozen tears on your face. You were so beautiful and so sad. And you were so kind. Your hands were warm when you touched my face, wiping away those tears. I remember thinking that I had not felt warmth in so long, and then there you were, bringing it back to me. Vincent lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. My warm hands wrote a new story, but you were the one who had the courage to read it, to believe in it. You could have turned me away, stayed locked in your grief, but you chose to open your heart again. Because you made it safe, Adelaide said. You never pushed, never demanded. You just offered your hand and let me take it when I was ready. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the river that had been the soundtrack to their courtship, their marriage, their life together. Then Vincent said, "If I had it to do over again, I would not change a single thing. Every moment, good and bad, led us here. To this life, this love, this family." "Neither would I," Adelaide agreed. "Not one single thing." As the sun began to set, they made their way back home, walking slowly, supporting each other as they had done for over 4 decades. Their cabin had been expanded several times over the years to accommodate their growing family, but it still had the same warm, welcoming feeling it had always had. That night, lying in bed together, Vincent pulled Adelaide close and said, "I hope we have many more years together. But if we do not, I want you to know that you have been the greatest blessing of my life. Loving you, building this life with you, raising our children together, it has been an honor and a privilege." Adelaide felt tears slip down her cheeks. "Do not talk like that. We have years yet. Maybe. But I still want you to know." "I know," she whispered. "And you have been my blessing too, Vincent. You saved me when I thought I could not be saved. You loved me when I thought I could never love again. You gave me everything I have." They fell asleep in each other's arms as they had done thousands of nights before, secure in their love and their life together. Vincent lived to be 71 years old, passing peacefully in his sleep in 1923, with Adelaide beside him and their children nearby. Adelaide mourned him deeply, but with a different kind of grief than she had experienced as a young widow. This was the grief of a life fully shared, of love completely given and received. She missed Vincent with every fiber of her being, but she was not broken by his loss. He had given her strength, and that strength sustained her. Adelaide lived another 7 years, dying at 77 in 1930, surrounded by her children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. In those final years, she often spoke of Vincent, telling stories about their life together to anyone who would listen. She wanted the younger generations to understand what real love looked like, how it endured through hardship and grew stronger over time. On the day of her funeral, her children found the gray dress in the old trunk, along with a letter Adelaide had written years before. The letter told the story of how she had come to Fort Yuma as a grieving widow with $5 and a carpetbag, how Vincent Nash had stopped when everyone else passed by, how he had seen her frozen tears and offered his warm hands, how together they had written a new story full of love and hope and family. "This dress represents who I was," Adelaide had written. "But the life I lived with your father represents who I became. I want you to remember that no matter how dark things seem, no matter how lost you feel, there is always the possibility of a new beginning. All you have to do is accept the hand that is offered and have the courage to start again. Your father gave me that courage, and together we built something beautiful. Never forget that love has the power to heal, to transform, to write new stories where old ones have ended." William, Emma, and Charles buried their mother next to their father in the Fort Yuma cemetery, under a simple headstone that read, "Vincent and Adelaide Nash together always." The whole town turned out for the funeral, testament to the lives they had lived and the love they had shared. The Nash Ranch continued to thrive under William's management, and eventually passed to his son, young Vincent, who had inherited his grandfather's gift with horses and his grandmother's strength of character. Emma's daughter became a teacher like her mother and grandmother before her, carrying on that tradition of education and service. Charles's children became writers and journalists, spreading stories of hope and justice throughout the country. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, members of the Nash family would walk down to the cottonwood tree by the Colorado River and sit in the shade, remembering Vincent and Adelaide, telling their story to a new generation. The story of frozen tears and warm hands, of grief transformed into joy, of a chance encounter that became a lifetime of love. The desert wind would blow through the cottonwood branches, carrying with it the whisper of that love, eternal and unchanging, a testament to the power of compassion, courage, and the choice to begin again. Vincent and Adelaide's story lived on in their descendants, in the ranch they had built, in the town they had served, in the hearts of everyone who had known them. It was a story that began with an ending but became a beginning, a tale of two souls who found each other in the wilderness and created a home, a family, a legacy that would last for generations. It was proof that even in the harsh, unforgiving landscape of the Wild West, love could flourish and endure, writing new stories over old sorrows, warming frozen tears with gentle hands, and building forever from the broken pieces of yesterday. And in the end, that was the greatest gift Vincent and Adelaide gave to the world, the knowledge that it is never too late to start over, never too late to love again, never too late to let warm hands write a new story over the frozen tears of the past. Their love was a beacon of hope in a hard world, showing that kindness and compassion could triumph over cruelty and loss, that two people who chose to build together could create something that would outlast them both, echoing through time as a reminder of what is possible when we dare to love fully and completely, holding nothing back.